Today on What It's Like Birthday Reflection episode, we're going to talk about the past, present, and future of this channel. Lots of exciting stuff happening. It's hard to believe that's already been a year. But before getting into all of that, I'm Jay. Welcome to What It's Like. This channel, we feature the classics, vintage, some exotics, lots of orphan cars, and cars that are off the beaten path. If that sounds of interest to you, subscribe and hit the bell icon next to it to never miss a video. Oh, where to start? Okay, I guess we start at the very beginning. So this whole thought process came to me at a craft show. It was actually Shaker Woods last year, so it had to have been like the second, third, fourth weekend of August. And I was like, man, it would be awesome if I could make a car YouTube program that went in depth with each individual car and showed things that people don't show, especially information that people are trying to get that are just getting into the hobby but can't find it for whatever reason. So that was the whole premise, the whole idea behind it. But, you know, just like any good idea, it's an uphill battle because I didn't have any access to this world. None. I pitched the idea to my wife and she said, yeah, but how are you going to get access to the cars? And I was like, well, I got a furniture business and I have a lot of contacts through that business. So I thought that, you know, maybe I could do some of their cars. But the first couple episodes, I wasn't entirely sure how I wanted this channel to go. So the first episode of my truck, I actually took maybe 5-6 days to shoot that. My wife would tell you I took a week and a half to shoot it because I wasn't entirely sure how I wanted to format it. It took us a long time to get the format down to where it is now. But honestly, everything's gone on pretty fast, all things considered. We almost hit 10,000 subscribers in a year, which is almost unheard of for somebody that doesn't have access to anything, having that many subscribers at the end of the year. And I have all of you guys to thank for that. So thank you so much for just loving this channel. Question: what is your favorite episode that you saw on this channel? Put it in the comment section below. I'm also curious, what is the very first episode that you saw on this channel? My favorite episode comes down to two. As from a production standpoint, my favorite is the one I did 3 people on: Preston Tucker, John DeLorean, Elon Musk, because it took forever to edit that video and the end product was absolutely incredible. If you never watched it, go give it a watch. It's 30 minutes long. If you have a really long poop, definitely worth watching on the toilet. Anyway, coming back to it, the other one is the Crosley episode, just because of how much background and in depth it went into. That's another good one to watch if you're into those two things. Okay, so we had the idea for the channel. Now, how did we get started? Well, for the first couple episodes, I did my vehicles. Like, if you noticed, I did the truck first. That was my delivery vehicle for my woodworking business. And it took me 4 days to shoot that video because I couldn't figure out what footage I wanted to show, what footage I didn't want to show, what I wanted to highlight, what format I wanted to go for. Like, the basic outline was there. Like, I wanted to show vintage ads as well as, you know, specs. I wanted to go heavy on the specs because nobody shows the specs. And I get in trouble. Like, people are like, you're blah, 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 blah over the specs. The specs are important to people that are getting into this hobby for the first time. And, like, people have to realize that that was the lens that I'm going for. I got a lot of flack for the this versus that 1955 Chevy to 1955 Ford Custom line because they were two totally different cars. Well, if you're getting into the automotive hobby for the first time, say you're like 20 years old and you want to go out and buy a 55 or a 55 Chevy or a 55 Ford, you don't know the difference between a hardtop and a sedan. You don't know that there is actually a difference. That's why I took the time and explained the differences, because somebody that's getting into this hobby for the first time doesn't know the differences. That was the original intent for this channel, but it turned out that this channel has become more of like a reminisce channel, which is great. It's even better than I could have ever imagined it because people are sharing their stories and keeping these cars alive. And it's amazing. It's one of the best aspects of this channel that I never even planned on. I love reading every story in the comment section. And when I say that I read all the comments, I legitly read every single comment that I get, even the bad ones. There's been a lot of whopper comments that I get, like people just telling me to quit, that I don't know anything, that I'm just a big idiot. I almost made shirts of the very first troll that I had on this channel. His name isn't important, but it's just, you know, everybody, if YouTube is not for the faint of heart, everybody has an opinion, and sometimes their opinions, sometimes they don't make sense, frankly. And the other thing is like, you know, they want to bash you on every single thing that you get wrong. And, you know, I'm getting it from sources from the internet. And I cite those sources, and they're like, oh, well, the source is wrong. And it happens. And especially with Dodge and Mopar, there's a lot of conflicting information out there for some reason. One site will say something, another site will say something, and then somebody will say something totally different than those other two sources. So what is the truth? Somewhere in the middle, right? Okay, we're going to move on to some questions. I'm pulling all of these questions from the comment section. I asked a couple episodes ago if anybody has any questions. I also went back in time, and some other people asked questions from before. So first question was, we're not going to say any names for any of these questions just to keep everybody's identity private. How is a young person such as yourself so knowledgeable on these old cars? Well, I'm not really young. I'm 33. I've always been into this stuff. The 1950s era has always fascinated me. When I was a kid in high school, I used to draw 50s cars like the Oldsmobile 88 from 1950. I used to just sit back and I used to just draw stuff from the 50s. I don't remember where this love came from. I always liked big white wall tires. I always liked lots of chrome. I always liked fins. Yeah, I was born too late. That's what I tell everybody. All right, on to question 2. What is your favorite era of car? Well, I love all eras, but I've narrowed it down to I really, really like the 50s and I really like the 30s. And I'm not saying that there is anything against any other era. It's just those are my 2 favorite eras. I love the 30s because of the late 30s Packards, which is a sin that I haven't been able to do any of them on this channel from the era in which that I love them. 1935, no, it's 1936 to 1942 is, in my opinion, the best era of Packard, in my opinion. And in the 50s, I love all the quirky cars. Like, there's so many underrated cars of that era that just never got press time, like the AMC Rambler Rebel. I would love to do a Rambler Rebel, and I've been looking for one to do on this channel before the end of the year. It's just they only made 1,500 of those, and they're super rare, and I found a couple in a couple collections around here. I just got to get their contact information, but I'm working on it. Question 3, what is the process behind making a video? Great question. So this is how I do it, and other people do it totally different, but I try to find a place, like I go to a car dealership or whatever, and I try to find 5 or 6 cars that I want to shoot. I shoot 5 or 6 cars that day in one shot. It generally takes me 2 hours to shoot between 4 to 6 cars, depending. That's doing all the B-roll, that's talking about the door panels and stuff. I don't do any of the research on cars beforehand. That way, I can go in, if I drive a car, it could be my honest reaction to that car. Then I just take one from the pile. So right now, I'm sitting on probably 15 cars that I can review at any time. I just take one from the pile, I research it, I make a script for it. The process of making one video used to take 8 hours. I'm down to 6 hours now because I never knew where to get the information from. And the more you do this, the more better you get. So it just gets easier. It gets easier to write a script. It gets easier to find information. It gets easier to edit. Everything gets faster in turn. I do it that way for a couple different reasons. One reason is sometimes when you do shots in front of the camera, YouTube, when it goes to YouTube, there is a time delay. So it almost looks like you're watching a Chinese movie, like my mouth is moving, but I'm not saying anything at all. And that irks me, but I have no idea how to fix it because it's like a transfer issue because it's fine until it transfers to YouTube. The other reason is I got my hands in a lot of pies that a lot of people don't know. So I work at John Kufleitner's Monday through Wednesday, and it's an hour drive down the road. I also do freelance photography, and I build some furniture on the side whenever people need furniture. It used to be a full-time thing, but wood prices have gotten so out of hand that a $200 cabinet's now a $500 cabinet, and it's just, I had to get a real job. So that's why I work at John Kufleitner's. It's the best job I ever had in the world, and it helps me drive some of this stuff. It gives me access to a world that I never had access to. And so we could compare cars and do all kinds of stuff, and everything works together. All right, moving on to the next question. How many cars have you owned? Well, the last time I counted, I owned 36 cars. That's with my wife. So when you get married, you have double the cars. I own 4 cars right now. We just bought another car, which I am going to do a review on because it's a brilliant car. And the automotive community, frankly, hates it. There's some cars that car guys are not supposed to like. This is one car that you're not supposed to like, but I think it's freaking brilliant. And I hate that it gets all the crap, and yet a Mercedes 450 SL gets put on this high pedestal when in reality that car is crap. All right, moving on to the next question. How many classic cars have you owned? That's an interesting question. Technically 3, but I also own 2 town cars that wasn't technically classic cars when I owned them, but looking back at them now, they're 20 years old. Or no, they're 30 years old now. They were 20 years old when I owned them. So I don't know if you can count those, but I guess we could throw them in there. So I had owned an 88 Town Car, Lincoln Town Car Signature Series, which was one of the best cars that I've ever owned. I've never had a car that rode as nice as that one. It's definitely the nicest riding car that I've ever owned. Then I owned an 89 Town Car. I ended up putting 2 transmissions in that car. It turned out to be a giant turd. And, you know, my parents were all about low mileage. And you had to get a car that had low mileage. I bought that Lincoln, the 89. It had everything. It was a Signature Series. It had a full vinyl top, leather pillow side seats, the digital dash, air suspension. It only had 90,000 miles on it when I bought it. We put 2 transmissions in that car. It turned out not to be a transmission problem. It turned out to be a spark plug problem. But what happened was you'd get it up to about 40 miles an hour, 40, 45, 50 miles an hour, and the car would just start bucking back and forth, almost like you were on a teeter-totter. Every single mechanic I took it to said that that's a transmission problem. I found out 10 years after selling that car that it wasn't a transmission problem, that it's actually a common Ford spark plug problem. So it's always important to, when you're dealing with something, do a tune-up, because a tune-up is a whole lot cheaper than a transmission. Anyway, back on point, I owned a 67 Mustang when I was 21 years old. I owned that until I was about 25. We sold it, wiped out debt, got married, started life anew. Had a hole in my heart from selling the Mustang, so we bought a Karmann Ghia to flip, and that turned out to be a colossal nightmare. Nobody knew what it was at the end of the rainbow, and a project that was supposed to take 3 months turned into a 1.5 year endeavor, and it just wasn't worth it. My dad told me when I bought that car and I brought it home. My dad told me when I bought that car and brought it home, he's like, "How much did you pay for it?" And I told him, and he's like, "Why don't you just stick it at the end of the driveway with, you know, $2,000 markup and just rid your hands of it?" And I was like, "I want to make it perfect. I want to make it good. I want to make it awesome." And he's like, "Okay, but you know, you're gonna wish that you didn't." So I didn't listen to him, and it turned into a colossal nightmare because you can't find anybody to paint cars around here. Nobody wants to work around here. And this was 10 years ago with a Karmann Ghia. So I took it to a friend who was gonna paint it. He ended up not doing that. He did some light body work, basically took it apart and just looked at it for a year. So I had to get it back from him. So I went and got it back from him. We took it over. I drove it to Akron, asked my dad, "Is it legal to drive a car with no bumpers on it?" And he just looked at me. He's like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, if I put the bumpers on, they're going to take the bumpers off whenever they get there. So why don't I just take all the bumper racks off and just drive it over there with no bumpers? Akron's a good hour and a half from here. And he's like, I don't know. He's like, that's a gray area. So I took all the bumpers off and we drove to Akron, got it painted. The Ghia was yellow, and my wife's like, we have to paint it yellow because yellow's numbers matching. And I was like, yellow's expensive. We're not painting it yellow. So we ended up going with sea blue with a white top. Car came out gorgeous. I drove it back and forth to work. I worked at Costco at the time. It got 32 miles to the gallon on the highway. It is the classic car with the best gas mileage that I've ever owned. It is a really good car. If you're thinking about getting a Karmann Ghia, I would highly recommend the Karmann Ghia. They're great cars. It's like driving a high-powered lawnmower. So back to the story. My dad actually helped me sell this car. For those that don't know, my dad passed away in 2016, same year we sold this car, same year that my daughter was born. Lots of stuff happened in 2016. He helped me sell the car, and then whenever the car was gone, he asked me, so was it worth it? Was it worth it making it perfect? And it wasn't worth it. I should have just listened to Dad from the get-go. And then the last one is the one that I own now, the 52 Chevy 1-ton truck. I looked forever for a truck for my business. I really wanted, so the Chevy wasn't the top pick. I wanted a AA Ford was top pick, and then second down was an International. I really, really wanted an International, like a KB5 or a KB6. Both of them are 1.5-ton trucks. I really, really want to feature them on this channel someday. I want to tell the difference between a KB5 and a KB6 because they're totally different, even though that they're in the same category of tonnage. Okay, on to the next question. Where did the whole button switches and knobs thing come from? That is an excellent question. So I wanted to do a channel totally different than anybody else was doing. Like, that's the whole premise. Like, you don't want to do a review on a car and say everything that somebody else said about it. You want to find things to pick apart that other people glossed over. Like, okay, we're going to go off on a little bit of a tangent. I got a lot of flack in the Pontiac Solstice video because I said the pedal box isn't straight. It isn't linear. If you have big feet, you get it stuck on the hill. There's like a little hill that the pedal box is, and it's hard to explain. And somebody was like, well, so-and-so did that and they didn't say it. And I was like, well, you're supposed to find things that other people don't talk about and talk about them. I was like, why watch somebody else's review if you want to just listen to the same talking points over and over again? But that's my thought process. I don't know. I just try to, I'm an outside the box kind of thinker. I want to show areas of cars that people don't talk about. And that's what I set out to do. And I started showing how to get in and out of some of these harder cars to get in and out of because people just cut to them inside the cars. They don't show you how hard it is to get in some of these cars. And so I'm going to make that a thing from now on. I'm going to show you how to get in some of these harder cars to get into. Like Ferrari 328 GTS is one of the hardest cars that I got into all year. But getting back to all the button switches and knobs, nobody talks about it. That's why that I wanted to show that whole thing. And the whole camera aspect came from it is I've had this camera for a while and I do wedding photography with it generally, or seniors or whatever, just some on the side freelance work. Anyway, I was like, I could make that background blow completely out and you could see the gauges for what they are. And I was like, nobody shows any of that. That would be an awesome thing to show. So I started doing it and like, you know, I just wanted to see if it would work. And it's one of the best segments on the program, I believe. That and the glove box test, of course. And the glove box test came about because those glove boxes look really, really small, but in reality, they're bigger than anything that we have now. On to the next question. Do you ever get turned down? Yes. Yes, I get turned down a lot. And it happened a lot more in the very beginning because they want to see your subscriber count and they want to see, you know, everybody's got to start somewhere. And that is the hardest part of all of it, was starting somewhere and then trying to figure out where you wanted to go from there. But once you start doing it and make more videos, you get more comfortable, and then you start figuring out what format you want to go for, what you want to show, what you want to talk about, and then everything else will kind of fall into place. I used to get mad when people denied me because I'm like, it's free advertisement to you and your business. Plus, you can use the video that, you know, I'm not charging any money to go shoot their cars or anything. I said I'd give you the video for free because you gave me the car for free. But you start getting into some of these big dealerships and it's all about the money, and it's sickening. Like, I went to a dealership and I shot a Jaguar F-Type, and I never aired that episode. It was the same day that the Kia EV6. I shot the Kia EV6, and there was a Jaguar dealership, same place. Anyway, the guy had a Tesla Plaid, and I was like, man, I'd love to shoot the Tesla Plaid, but he didn't want me to shoot the Tesla Plaid because some other big shot YouTuber was coming down and they wanted it to be a first thing, and you had to shoot logos a certain way or you get sued, and it's all about money with the new cars. And I was like, I don't want to deal with any of that stuff because it's not all about money to me. It's about the cars and trying to get the right information out there. And it really hurts whenever, you know, somebody says, hey, you got that wrong in the comment section, because I try to do my due diligence and look, cross-reference those figures and stuff. And yeah, sometimes I get it wrong, but I really hate it when I do, because I hate giving out false information. This channel is supposed to be for people that are getting into the car hobby and just want a gist of what the car is about, essentially, and show them where all the button switches and knobs are. Talk about key points that people didn't talk about, especially on cars that Motor Trend just kind of dusted out underneath the rug, like the Plymouth Savoy, 1962 Plymouth Savoy with a 413 max wedge will totally annihilate a 65, well, we'll just say 65 Stingray, because that Stingray made the most horsepower, 375 horsepower with the fuel injection 327. And, you know, Motor Trend, because it was a Corvette, it was the best thing in the world. The Savoy could eat that thing for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's 5 seconds faster than it in the quarter mile. But, you know, nothing could be better than the Corvette. Just like nowadays, you know, Tesla is better than anything, but they don't ever take Teslas because, you know, that is a car that if you're a car enthusiast, you're not supposed to like. And frankly, it's not fair. So this channel is a lot like, I was the quiet kid in school. Now, I know that's hard to believe, but maybe one day I'll get out my yearbook and I'll show you that I was voted quietest in school. And it's crazy that I'm doing this now. It's crazy that I have a YouTube channel, and it's crazy that I put myself out there like this, but you know, people change. Okay, this is the final question, and then we're going to move on to future events. What is your favorite aspect of the channel? For me, my favorite part is I want this to be a car community, and the fact that it sort of kind of is, especially whenever you guys correct me in the comment section. I love reading everybody's stories, and I love it when people give me more information. Automated Electronics has given me so much information on so many cars. Man, I wish that I could remember half of the stuff that he's forgotten over the years. And thank you so much for everybody. I don't remember everybody's names, but he's been with me since, he's been one of the ones with me since the very beginning. This is going to sound totally cheesy, but I absolutely look forward to everybody's comments in the comment section, especially the people that have been commenting since the very beginning. And like, I know who you guys are, and I just love it whenever I see you in the comment section, because you're like family to me. I don't know how else to really describe it besides saying that without it becoming overly cheesy. But okay, on to future events. I'm hoping this year that we could bring in 3 of my friends. They're car guys. My brother, his name's Jordan. This guy I work with, his name's Zach. And you saw Trevor for the one episode when I was racing his Jetta wagon in my crappy van. I'm hoping to do 2 specials a year with those guys. And maybe we'll go out, we'll do everything like cheap car oriented. It'll be something similar to Top Gear or Impractical Jokers, because there's 4 Impractical Jokers. It won't be like Impractical Jokers. It'd just be like a car program with 4 guys. And, you know, I just wanted to see what your take was on that, if that would be something that you guys would be interested in watching or something to probably skip. I would love to do cheap car challenges with them and not doctor them up in any way, like legitly buy $1,000 car and then do 4 ridiculous challenges with it. And like different categories of car, like maybe do a cheap classic car challenge where we go out and find $1,000 classic car and then put them up against one another, or $1,000 van challenge, or $1,000, just to show what you could get for $1,000. You could still buy a lot of car for $1,000, frankly. Also, which cars would you like to see featured on this channel? Put in the comment section below. Thank you all so much for all the support. We couldn't have gotten here without you guys, and I really appreciate it. You have no idea. This is what I've always wanted to do. Somebody asked me one job that I had, if I could have any job in the world, what would it be? And I said automotive journalist, and they just kind of looked at me funny because the job that I had, there was no path to that as an outcome. And the fact, I'm not really an automotive journalist per se, but the fact that I get to be around all of these really cool cars every day and explain how they work and show you different aspects and different perceptions of these vehicles, it's awesome. And I honestly couldn't have done it without you guys. Thank you so much for everything. And until next time, toodaloo!